Yeah, have the cheering squad. Woohoo! All right. Well, is it? So we're rolling. Well, great.
Rocking and rolling.
Rocking and rolling.
Oh, that's John Travolta in Grease. When he was trying to pick up on Sandy, he said rocking and rolling.
Did he really?
I'm pretty sure. I'll have to go watch it again. Anyway.
All right. Well, I am Benny.
And I am Valerie.
And this is the podcast of brother and sister and brother, however you want to say it, that where one of us comes with a subject matter, and the idea is that we want you to live your best life.
On a daily basis.
Yeah, not once a week or anything like that. I'm not sure why. Yeah,
I don't know what. No, yeah. So one of us brings in a topic, and the other one has no idea, and they will introduce it as we move on, and we just chat about it in hopes that things that we have put into practicality in our lives will help inspire you to do the same.
Yeah. So that's our goal. So thank you for joining us, and we're super glad that you guys are here. Iggy is here as well. Iggy is our sound guy. How you doing, Iggy?
I'm good.
He's good.
Always a pleasure.
Always a pleasure. Nice. I think that's the most Iggy's ever said on the podcast.
He used to say a little bit before he had the microphone, but so I don't think it was picked
true.
up.
That's true. Maybe that's true. We just didn't hear everything. Yeah. Now that he's got a mic, it's over with.
I know. He's going to take over.
He's going to interrupt and say, "Well, I have something to say."
That's my podcast.
Yeah.
Nice. All right. Well, Valerie, so how are you? How's the week been? How are things going?
You know what? When I walked in, I said, I'll chat with you later about it. So I've had kind of an emotional week, and I'll tell you why. I'm not going to get into a lot of detail because it has to do with my kids, and that's their own story. But so my ex-husband, Rob, he's in town, and he hasn't been here in years. But so it's just been a little emotional for me because there's hurts with the kids with him, and as a mom, you hurt when your kids hurt.
Sure.
And so it's kind of like I don't know. It's kind of like I'm just indirectly affected by things, and again, I'm not going to get into detail a lot about it, but it's just kind of weighed on me this week because he's been in town since, I believe, Monday, and then he goes home tomorrow. So, all that said, it's just like heavy, a little bit of heaviness because you don't, I don't know. I don't want to say too much, but I just, you always want the best for your kids, and you want them to be happy and this kind of stuff. And so it's just, and then both kids, Nicole and Dustin, handle things differently. And so, there's just that dynamic too. So I don't know, as a mom, I'm just trying to be there and understand, which I totally understand.
Yeah.
But it does weigh on you as a parent. And I'm sure you understand that. Like if you have your kids going through things, you're just like, you feel it no matter what. And then on top of that, I get my email. So that, that's just part of it. It wasn't completely weighing me down, but it just was heavy on my heart. And then I got an email yesterday about my school site. As you guys hear this podcast, I will already be working, but right now I'm due to go back to work next Wednesday, and they changed my school site.
No way. So no more meeting mom in the morning?
Right? I thought of that. But I have the best team. They've already sent emails out. They've already made phone calls. They're like, we're going to get you back. This isn't final, and so in my mind, I'm like thinking, okay, I have hope, and then
you're referring to the school that you were at.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, okay. That's the best team. Okay.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
So they're like, we're going to figure it out. And we have a new principal, and I have never even met her, but Ashley, our learning center teacher, went straight to her and explained the whole subject. And she said, okay, we can't lose her. Let me make phone calls too. And I was like, wow. So, and I even made my own phone calls this morning, and they said, as soon as I said my name, they were like, oh, let me just interrupt you. We already have your name on our desk. We're trying to figure it out. I don't know what we can do. We're going to try to figure it out. So we'll see. But I am, so part of me is like, I couldn't sleep a lot last night just because I kept thinking about it. Like, oh my God, I got to get used to a new school site and people and all this kind of stuff. But then I'm like, I'm a person of faith, and I just feel like, okay, well, maybe that is where I'm supposed to be.
Right.
So I will be okay with it. But at the same time, I'm going to exhaust all measures to try to stay where I want to be.
Yeah. Well, it's a weird thing. Did we just talk about this last week?
Yeah.
About expectations and doing what we can, and just having. We also talked a few weeks ago about disappointment, and so it's like, practicing what we preach is
exactly
is
yeah,
not quite
and
as
it's not
easy.
going to. I mean, the thing is like, and we said this last week actually, but it's not going to do me any good to worry about where I'm going to be. You know what I mean? It's
Right.
like, okay, well, I made phone calls. I know my team is making a few phone calls and emails, so we are doing what we can do. But at the end of the day, if I have to move, I have to move, and I'm not going to. I'm going to look at it like that's where I'm supposed to be, and there's a reason for this. So
yeah, it's still a bummer. It still kind of sucks, and I do get it. So I'm glad. And then the whole thing with your kids, it's always hard to watch kids not. I'll never forget. This is nowhere near the gravity of what you're talking about, but Ashley saving money. This was when she was in high school, and saving money for, well, it felt like years. I don't know if that's a fair statement, Patty, about. And but she saved money for years in high school because she wanted to buy a digital camera, like a really cool digital camera. And she was just really set on it. She was saving birthday money and Christmas money and any kind of money that she could get. I don't even remember where she got it from. And she was translating because we lived in Ecuador in these days. And so she was just saving. And then finally we came to the States, which is way less expensive than Ecuador for those kind of things. And and she bought it. Really super excited. You could do the color thing where you could say only do red.
Yeah.
And she was so excited. And I am not joking. It was like 20 minutes later that phones came out with cameras. It seemed like. And no one used the digital camera. And she used it for a few months, a couple months. She saved it for years. It was saved up for years, and then it
she
was
could
like
just put it on Facebook Marketplace.
Yeah, right now it would be an antique.
That's a bummer.
But she was like, and so one of those things that it was just like, oh my gosh, it's just so sad. So nowhere near the gravity, but I do understand. We felt
you feel
so
for
bad.
them, yeah,
We really felt bad.
What's interesting about the camera thing, because I think about Kylie on her cruise. She made sure to bring a Polaroid, and when we were going to go visit her, she's like, do you mind grabbing me some Polaroid film and bringing it to me? And I was like, okay. So we've gone from, the digital camera to phones, and now Kylie's wanting to use her Polaroid.
Back to the Polaroid, back to the Polaroid, because people want the quick, they want the picture.
Yeah, yeah.
Something in
and it's
print.
Cute. They like the little, I guess the white at the bottom or whatever.
Right. So no. Well, I'm sorry. We had a weird week because not long after recording our last podcast, or maybe it was even during our podcast, but our dog got sick. And so that's a really weird feeling. I have to tell you, it's I don't want to say it's just a dog, because it's, if anybody who has pets is going to be offended, as well as the fact that I really don't feel like that either. It's like
that's your
they
fur
really
baby.
become part of your family and all that stuff. But because he's 10, right? He's 10. Because he's 10, he's a pug. It's like you start to wonder, oh my goodness, is this it?
Yeah.
And then you're reminded of why you didn't want to get a dog in the first place, and then because of the last dog.
Yeah,
died,
once you have one that passes, and you're like, oh.
So I don't want to get into the gross details, other than to say we really didn't know. And then you go to the vet, and they want to, they really seriously want to know what's going on. Or a better way of saying that is they want a lot of money.
Yeah.
And so it's like they're asking you to do all these tests, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I wouldn't do this for my firstborn. That's not true. That's not true. So, but anyway, they ended up giving him meds without having to do every single test, and he's doing a lot better, and he's acting normal. Some of the symptoms that he had are still there a little bit, but it's really weird.
He seems normal when I walked in.
Yeah,
totally.
He does seem normal. So, so anyway, so we had a little weird week, and then at the same time that's going on, I have 2 papers due for my master's class again, and I really hate when they land on when we have 2 of them at the same time.
Right.
Plus, a high client load nowadays. So it's just been a really interesting time. So yeah, we both have an interesting time. Do you even want to do this? Should we just close up?
Let's just say goodbye. No, just kidding.
No, I'm really glad that we're doing this, and it's really good for me. I find it helpful. I actually think about things that you've said. Like, for instance, you said this 100 years ago that I shouldn't chew gum. You know, I've never chewed gum since then because chewing gum makes me hungrier.
It tricks your brain to think that you're eating
Yes.
something. So it's like, wait, where's the food going? And then your stomach is waiting and waiting and waiting.
It had nothing to do with the podcast, or at least I remember. But I stopped chewing gum, and then I think about other things. So yeah. So what I wanted to talk with you about today, are you ready?
I am.
Is limiting beliefs.
Oh.
Like, what are they?
I don't know. You tell me. This is your topic.
So limiting beliefs, I'm going to just read something that I stole from the internet. Okay. Limiting beliefs are those ideas about yourself or others or the world that block your personal growth. For example, thoughts like, people like me never catch a break, or I can't trust anyone, are examples of limiting beliefs. So I'm not going to keep reading because I'd rather, at this point, are you in the ballpark of what we're talking about?
Yeah.
So what do you think about limiting beliefs, and how, do they nag you ever, and how do they, or what's your experience with them?
I mean, I think back in all honesty, I feel like I've changed my lifestyle in such a way that it's more on the positive note. And then when something happens to me, I'm not like, oh my gosh, of course this is going to happen to me. I'm more like, okay, this happened. What is this trying to teach me? Kind of attitude.
Yeah.
But there was a day that it would be just like, you would just like, when it rained, it poured. Like this would happen, then this would happen, and then this, and you're just like, oh my gosh, why? Like, and that's
Right.
very true. That little quote, "I can't catch a break," or, but I think, I'm not trying to say, oh, like I have it all together, but I do think that in terms of, I don't know, maybe give me an example of something, because I can't think of anything off the top of my head.
Another one, not necessarily a limiting belief that you have, but I think what's interesting is that I think we all carry limiting beliefs at some level. And I think of certain things that we grew up with now, because I think most of them are formed early on, and they become part of who you are, and you think, this is who I am based on either what people have told you, any kind of authority figure, whether it be a coach or a parent or a sibling, or I'm trying to think of other people, a boss, if you had a boss when if you're working when you were young, and they might say things that plant something in your mind that all of a sudden, because this, the example that I'm giving here that from this website has to do with, it's very, I can never catch a break or whatever. But I think of something that's very specific too, that's a limiting belief is, this is going to be a really silly, weird example. But I remember, I don't like to paint like a house. Actually, I don't like to paint anything.
I thought you meant like a portrait.
Yeah.
Like a picture.
I probably don't like to do that either. Although I've kind of learned that Trinity took us to a ice cream, and it was instead of the wine and whatever,
wine and paint or whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
This was an ice cream and paint, and that was really fun. Actually, I actually enjoyed it because they really.
Well, they teach you as you go.
They really make you go. So, yeah. And then when you're all done, you kind of look at it and you go, I did that?
Yeah.
But not that mine was great, but I still was surprised.
Yeah.
Because you could actually make out what it was.
Right.
But the thing that I think is interesting is that I graduated college. I went to I had my first job, what I call my first professional job, and then we quit that job. We moved to Missouri, and when I moved to Missouri, I had to go to. I didn't work my professional job, quote unquote. I worked with my father-in-law in
construction or whatever. Yeah.
And so one of the things we were doing was painting. And what happened was he made a mistake. Instead of buying windows, the like ironclad, or I can't remember what they're called, but it's like metal covers the wood, so that way you don't have to paint them, and that way the windows don't go bad.
I see.
Well, he didn't do that. He bought wooden ones, and it was somehow messed up. But suffice it to say, we had to paint all those windows.
Oh, I see.
And so I got to paint them. He wasn't going to paint them, and so I painted them all. And and there was a lot, and it's very detailed work, and you have to do it right, and so on. And I was just getting angry. I seriously was getting angry. And I just remember that one of the things that happened was, what came into my mind was our dad, who said, now this is going to sound weird because it might not sound like a limiting belief, but it did frame my way of thinking. But what our dad always said is, if you get a degree, you can do whatever you want. I had a degree and I was painting windows. I didn't want to do that.
Yeah.
And what I recognize is that there were certain thoughts, certain beliefs that I had. Now, I don't know if I want to call this limiting or not, but I had beliefs in my mind that said, this is the way I should be living. And because I was living according to that, I was really angry as I was painting these windows, instead of thinking, I'm grateful that I have a job because I just moved here and I have nothing.
Right.
I was irritated, and I realized the root of it really had to do with the fact that it's like, I shouldn't have to do
I shouldn't be doing this. Yeah.
I shouldn't be doing this. I should, I don't know what I should be doing, but I shouldn't be doing this. And then I just realized that there's a ton of things like that, especially as I was growing up, that I would be thinking something about myself, and I wouldn't I wouldn't act in a certain way. So, we talked about this a long time ago. I can't dance. So I'm not going to dance. I'm not going to look foolish. And so there's all these kind of root thinking, things that I just believed about myself, that I'm not going to do it.
Right.
And it's still taking time to become the person.
Yeah. But don't you feel like that you claim that, like, to say I can't dance, like then you claim that for yourself. So, even if you really truly can't and you don't have any rhythm, if you changed it to I can dance, I just choose not to. Like, do you think that's...
Well, no, I think that's what I'm saying is that I said to myself, I can't. The truth of the matter is I can dance. Can I dance well? That's a totally different subject.
Yeah.
But I can dance.
Yeah.
But see, I have like this little limiting belief that I can't do it. So I'm really talking about really small things, but I think for some people, it's like they think about their life and they think I can't make friendships.
Yeah.
I can't have, I don't know how to speak to people in a group. I don't know how to speak to people individually.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. I can't get intimate. I'm not going to be, I'm never going to find I've lived this where it's like, I'm never going to find my dream job. I'm not going to totally do that. And so it's funny that, I worked for Amazon for years. For how long did I work for Amazon? A couple and a half years. It wasn't exciting to me to work there. And yet, because I was in a different place in life, I was just super grateful that I had a job.
Right.
I was super grateful for the exercise I got. I was super grateful for the experience. I'm grateful that I can talk about it here. And I was grateful for, quite frankly, benefits, because that's the biggest thing that I had. And they had a lot of flexibility so I could do other stuff. So, I'm just saying, we plant certain things in our minds, and or at least I should say there are certain things in our minds, and they prevent us from moving forward. Does this make sense?
Yeah, it does. It does. And I wish that I could think of, there are things that I have said to myself that I can't do that. They're about, it was right about the time that we had to move out of our Scott Street house. I was going to take a course. It was only about a 10-month course on nutrition. It was with the integrated, something, or I can't remember. I can't remember what it was. But anyway, I was all set to do it. I had the money to do it. I was going to, part of me was like, I don't know if I can do this. So like, am I going to be dedicated enough to sit there and take this? It was online. Am I going to be able to dedicated enough to do this? And will I be able to retain the information to take the test at the end? And there was all this stuff I did have a limiting belief on that for sure. And then once I made the deposit on it, I was like, okay, I'm going to do it. And now I have to tell myself I can do this, because I don't want to go into it thinking I can't do it.
Right.
As luck would have it, that's when we ended up having to move out of Scott Street. And so I was like, oh my gosh, there's no way I can trying to find a new place and all that stuff. I can wrap my head around trying to get this done as we're trying to look for a new house. So I never did it, and I never went back to it. Part of me kind of feels like, okay, well, maybe that was a blessing in disguise. Maybe that wasn't something I was supposed to do, because after that, I never even really had the desire to do it. It was like I found, I don't know. I don't know. But I did have that limiting belief there. And maybe, I don't know, in the back of my mind, maybe I still had it where that's why I didn't sign back up. But I honestly know that there was never that urge, like, because there was that urge for a long time. And it was like, well, just put the deposit down so that you can do it. And then I had to change myself to think, okay, now I can do this. But
that's so funny, because it's interesting that you say this, because I'm going to talk about my wife, and she's going to be thrilled. So, but for years, she had a limiting belief when we were first married, because I would talk to her for some reason. I don't know why, because I was never one to like, you need to go back to school, because she didn't get a degree, college degree. I never was one to say that. But on the other hand, I would kind of encourage her, because she was going in the teaching direction. I'm like, why not get the degree? No, I'm never going to be good in college. And then, suffice it to say, she ends up going back to college online in Ecuador while we're in the middle of planting churches and doing all this work and in a different culture, plus working full time. And she ends up being a straight A student.
Right.
And it was one of the, I mean, she just.
So she didn't have the limiting belief.
Well, she did, until she finally did what you're talking about.
Just
like
take the
I'm
plunge.
I'm going to go for it.
Yeah.
I'm going to take the plunge, because I don't know.
And then
you
did
can
you
correct
feel
me if
like,
I'm wrong. Did you feel like did you go into it with a limiting belief, or did you go into it thinking, no, I can do this? I learned.
like, once you realized you committed to do it, did you still have the limit, or did you have to change your mindset?
I think I did have to change my mindset, because even though I made the decision to do it, every time a new class would start, I would say, I'm going to fail this class.
Oh my gosh, that's right. She did say that.
And yeah. And, and then it became a joke in the house, because I would go into it going, I'm going to fail this class. It's so hard. It's so hard. And then I would get an A. And that happened every single time.
Right.
I wonder. And there were a few times where I was just like, this is so hard. I want to quit. I don't want to do this anymore.
Yeah.
Because we did have a lot going on. The kids were young. And it was really hard and really stressful. And there were times it was very overwhelming. But Benny was really encouraging, because he's like, Patty, don't quit now. Don't quit now. You only have a few more, you've
already vested this much time.
This
yeah.
far.
Yeah.
You need to finish, just finish. And I'm so thankful I finished.
Yeah.
So I mean, I had a great cheerleader and a great support.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
Well, then that goes to show that even if you do have that limiting belief, and even though if you're going into it saying, I'm going to fail this class, and then you walk out with an A, I applaud you, because to even go into it thinking, I'm not going to do good in this class, and then you do. Maybe because I've heard this with other people, and I might have even done this to myself. Maybe when you say to yourself, I'm not going to get an A in this class, it's because you don't want to set yourself up to fail. Like, you kind of want to, just go, you want to be surprised that you did better than you thought you were going to be.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny, because I think, and thank you, Boogers, for sharing. But what's interesting is that in her case, like, literally, without even talking about it, she'd say, oh, no, I'm not a school person. I'm not a school person. I'm not a school person. I love kids, but I'm not a school person. And then, so it's like, there's a convincing, and I can go, I ended up getting my degree and my college degree when we were first married. And what's funny is that I might have already talked about this a little bit, but I hated writing papers. I mean, I can't even begin to tell you how much I hated writing papers. And this was back in the day that you use books.
You had to write them.
yeah. It's like typewriter, that kind of a thing, or barely had a computer. And you have the books are books, they're not online. And I remember distinctly at times, I was getting a Christian ministries degree, and I was throwing the books around the house. That's a little weird.
Maybe we should, next topic on anger.
I was throwing books on dealing with your anger, and I was throwing them around the house. No, but I was I hated it. So when I wanted to get this master's degree, honestly, I think I probably wanted to get this master's degree a long time ago. And Stephanie, our sister, really helped me through this because I told her, I said, Stephanie, I don't know how I'm going to do this. I have to do it online because I just simply don't have the time with work and everything to go to school. And I just said, so I'm going to have to do it online, which means writing papers. And then I remembered my college days.
Right.
And she said, Benny, it's going to be different and you're not going to have an issue. And I really thought, I don't know what you're talking about, but I also thought like Valerie, like you
mean like Patty?
Oh yeah, that's right. Like Patty, that's my wife, the one over there. So if like Patty and like you, that's right. I thought I just need to do it. I'm just going to go for it.
Yeah. And you know what, your maturity and you're at a different place too, I think.
Totally.
But you know what?
Place.
I just thought of something. Okay. I'm sorry to interrupt. You know,
dun, dun, dun.
So, drum roll.
Okay.
No, it's interesting. I just thought of something because I don't know what you said, but it struck a memory. It struck a chord of when I used to run all the time. And the weirdest thing I used to say was Peter would say something about me being a runner. And then I go, I'm not a runner. I just run. And then, I mean, is that the weirdest thing? I would run every day, anywhere from 4 to 6 miles. And then, of course, I'd started doing half marathons and stuff. And even then, I would say, oh, yeah, I ran this and that. And he goes, yeah, she's a runner. She's been running since blah, blah. I go, I'm not a runner. I just run, you know. And it was weird that I wouldn't identify that. But I did have, even running, going into like doing the marathons or even I think I started with a half a marathon. I remember thinking there's no way I'm going to be able to go from 4 miles to 13 or even take it further to 26.2. And, but again, you know, you have that thing in there where you're just saying, there's no way I'm going to be able to do that.
Right.
Like, you know, but then you have to, I guess we've said this many times, flip the switch on that and then just go, no, I can, but I'm not going to be able to do it overnight. So I'll take my 4 miles to 8 miles and then to 12 and then, you know.
Right. Well, I think the key, you know, and the reason why I brought up this subject is because I think all of us and listeners, we carry certain things into our lives and we don't even realize we're carrying it into it. And it's literally controlling what we do and don't do at times because we have this belief about who we are or whatever. It's very interesting that you just said that because I know what you just said a few minutes ago about Dad saying something, and I'm going to say this, and he's probably going to listen to this podcast, so sorry, Dad. But I do remember feeling like I had limiting beliefs on what I could do with my life because I remember him specifically telling me that I wouldn't be anything in life unless I got a college degree. Yeah. And so there was a lot of, in the very beginning, like, you know, I know this isn't, I'm not, you know, I know I'm just a stay-at-home mom. You know, you're not just a stay-at-home mom. That's a very important job that you're doing. But yeah, but I just stay at home. You know, I minimized everything I did, you know. Yeah. And I can't think of any more examples, but I do remember that point. And it wasn't until I finally just, you know, said to myself, no, this is important what I'm doing. And this is exactly what I want to do. So I'm not going to let those words that did come into my head from, like, you know, you just made a good point, from things from the past that might pop into your head. Right. Well, I remember growing up and being on the football team and stuff. And you know, I was the Christian guy and I was the jokester and I was a good athlete, but no one was, you know, accusing me of being the strongest and the you know, most brutal on the field. And so I remember whatever sport it was. And so I remember at times even the pressure of my peers making it sound like I'm not anything strong, right, and then feeling later on, well, I'm not strong. I can't do this. Or walking around with fear, walking around with this sense of fear, like I'm not sure that I can, and then recognizing why am I walking around with this sense of fear everywhere I go? Why is it that I feel like I'm in a dangerous situation no matter where I'm at? Right. And it literally took pulling that root out of saying I'm not going to walk around with this limiting belief about who I am. Now, well, also to make, I mean, to even like further that part of it where you didn't think you were strong in football because of what somebody said. If I remember correctly, you were a wide receiver, right? I was a receiver and a safety. Yeah. Okay. So
my point is that maybe you weren't the strongest person in there. Maybe you could never be somebody that hits other people. I don't know what the positions are in football.
Nice job. Nice job.
A quarterback? No, a quarterback doesn't even get hit, right?
No.
But anyway, all to say, you need every single person on the team for a reason. And maybe you're not the strongest one, but you're in a position.
Are you trying to feed into my I'm not the strongest one? Is that what you're trying to say?
Yeah, I'm trying to make you feel not strong. No, I'm trying to say that they needed you in that position for whatever that reason was. And I'm just saying, like, it takes everyone on the field to make a team. And
no, I agree with you.
And like
totally
I would say this to Kylie too, because she would, when she would audition for a musical or something, and she would get ensemble, although she wanted a lead part, and she would be in ensemble. She'd go, well, I'm just ensemble. Like, you're just ensemble? No, they need an ensemble to make it a whole musical. Right. So let's not minimize that part of it.
No, I agree. Well, I would say I totally agree with you. There's a different podcast there and understanding, your role and being willing to accept it. In this one, what happened for me though is I took the route and I allowed it to like control me in other areas. In other areas, and feeling fear and feeling and it took a while for me to recognize, why do I feel like this?
Of course.
And I remember the day. I can distinctly remember the day. I don't remember exactly what happened. When I say I remember the day, I don't mean I remember it was May 4th or whatever. But I just remember a day when I was asking myself, literally, I said, what would a man do in this situation? And I was like probably 17 to 19 in that. And I literally asked myself, what would a man do in this situation? And I think I had asked myself that question many times over the years. But in that moment, it was the first time, 17 to 19, somewhere around there. And I said, I said to myself, a man would do whatever I do. I am a man.
Mm-hmm.
And that was like a big deal for me because I recognized that I don't have to do what somebody else tells me and dictates what I have to do. I can do what I feel is right.
Yeah.
And if what I feel is right is to, show empathy or whatever, then that's okay. And, the classic one, although I don't think I ever struggle with this, is, men don't cry.
Oh, yeah.
And now we're getting a little off of limiting beliefs. But what I will say is that men not crying is really about being authentic and being able to share what's really going on with you. And that is a limiting belief because it affects your intimacy with your friends, your family. And often it makes you feel distant to people because you don't get to you're not allowed to express your emotions. And
I think that's changed a lot though over the course of generations.
I agree. I think it's different. But what I will say is, if you allow those roots to come into you,
definitely,
then you're going to have an issue. And it doesn't matter what it is. Now, I mean, I am the one that cries at it. I cry at commercials. I cry at everything.
I know.
Everybody always laughs.
Well, I mean, it starts as you're a kid. Boys don't cry, So if
Yeah.
you grow up with that, and then you think, "Oh my God, I'm crying. I must be a wuss or a sissy or whatever you want to
or I'm
use."
not a boy. I'm not a man.
Yeah,
something's wrong with me. And I'm not trying to get into the whole gender
Right,
issues.
right.
But I'm saying I'm talking about psychologically.
Yeah.
I can start to say, "Ooh, I can't do that because I need to be this other
Exactly.
thing."
Yeah.
And so honestly, there are all kinds of those things. The bigger issue that I want to stay on it here, because I think we're good on time though, is that I think that people can't. Some people don't live their best life because they're allowing certain beliefs to limit them in what they potentially can do. So in other words, I'm too old to get a degree.
Exactly.
I'm too old to go back to school. I am too weak to run a marathon. I'm not a runner. I can't I can never work out. There's no way I could ever work out. I've never worked out in my entire life. I'm going to bring Patty up again. She didn't work out, never did work out. And then finally, long story short, ended up going to CrossFit with me and loved it.
She came in to watch a couple times and said, "Okay, I'll try it." And then, and then
ended up loving it.
Well, it's a good, the example of what you just said is our friend Jill that we just met with last week. She started taking courses in production. I'm not quite sure exactly but she did say that she had the limiting belief of, am I too old to do this? And then she's like, no, I got a lot of good years in my life. I'm going to do it. And she ended up loving it and she's moving on with that. And I think that, if there's anyone out there listening to this that thinks they have a limiting belief because of age or because of gender or whatever,
or even failure. So
Or
this is
if
another
you're
thing.
going to fail I think you're going to fail at it.
Or maybe you did fail at
Yeah.
it. You might have failed at something before, and so now you choose not to do it again. So a classic one is, and you brought this up a while ago, but I'll bring it up again in a generic sense, is someone who has a relationship and they're positive this is the relationship. They're positive this person is the one. And then it doesn't work out. And they break up. And then that person kind of makes this little vow that says, I'm not going to do this again. I'm never going to put my head on the block to
Be hurt.
be hurt. Yeah, exactly. I'm just not going to do that. Or even worse, from a limiting belief standpoint, is saying I'm not the type of person that has long-term relationships. That's not me. I just don't have those.
Right.
And once we plant that, then you're right. You're not gonna.
You're claiming it.
Yeah, you're not gonna have it, and you're gonna dictate your behavior. Excuse me, is gonna be dictated by that belief. So yeah, you're not gonna.
You can sabotage a really good relationship because in your mind you're thinking, I cannot have a long-term relationship.
Exactly. Or I took a job that was a really good job, and then it turns out that they let me go because for whatever reason, it doesn't matter. Well, I'm not going to look for that kind of. I'm never going to look in that direction again. Now, granted, you might learn from. Obviously, we want to learn from our failures. Matter of fact, I read somewhere, it was fascinating. I can't remember who said this, but I wish I could remember. But the person said, you don't learn from successes.
Yeah.
No one
absolutely.
learns from successes. Yeah. You learn from failures.
Yeah. You don't grow unless you fail, in all honesty, in certain situations, in a lot of situations. And it doesn't have to be a fail like it's just never going to happen again. But,
yeah.
you know.
Well, I always use the example of learning a language. So we learned Spanish when we were in our 30s. Were we in our 30s or 40s or something like that? And what's funny is that everybody who said, you would meet people and they say, oh, no, I don't, who have been in the country in Ecuador, in our case, for years and years and years, and they still didn't speak the language. And then we would ask them, oh, why don't you speak it? And they go, well, I just don't speak it well, so I don't speak it. Ironically, if you don't speak it poorly, you will never speak it well.
Exactly.
You don't just all of a sudden you speak it well. It's like the way we learn, the way we grow. So the point is sometimes, maybe in the case of learning a language, it's like, well, no, I don't speak it well. They're not going to understand me, so there's no point in even going. Whereas if you take the position of, I'm going to go for it, and then I'm going to make mistakes. And if I make a
mistake, then somebody can correct me and I'll learn the right way.
And then I just keep growing and I ultimately can speak the language. And so that's the only way it works.
Yeah.
And that's really the way a lot of life works, is going for it, blowing it, and then seeing what happens.
Well, I mean, honestly, think about even doing this podcast when you first asked. I mean, we both were just like, let's just do it, you know. Where it's going to go, we don't know. Is it going to be good? Are people going to listen? I don't know. We hope so. Yeah. But we just had to do it. And, you know, the interesting thing, wherever it ends up landing, like down the road in the future, I will never regret this time. I will never think this was a failure if it doesn't, you know, get to a place where we think it's benefiting people or whatever. I don't even know how.
Even what I like is the idea, what you're saying. Let's just even be more practical. I've been listening to our podcast, and then, you know, I definitely know that not every one of them is perfect, right?
Oh gosh.
But I'm like thinking, I get better when I listen to it, even when I listen to the ones that aren't, you know, what I would hope it would be.
Yeah.
And hopefully it gets better and better and better. And I just think that's life, isn't it?
Yeah. Also too, yeah, I agree. And I mean, I have been listening to them back too, because it's been a while and we're putting descriptions down or whatever. But I also feel like I feel more comfortable talking than I did the very first day. But at the same time, I don't want this to be like a perfect quote unquote podcast. This is raw. This is us not staying on topic all the time, but in hopes that we will touch one or more lives in a positive way that will help.
Honestly, if somebody out there, and I'm really thinking about those folks that are out there, including myself, and considering, okay, what is it that you really dream about? and why aren't you doing it? And my guess is that I mean, there's probably a number of reasons, but for some of you out there, it's literally just because you have decided you can't do that.
Mm-hmm. And take it a second, and not to interrupt you, but I do interrupt you all the time. No, but to reflect on why you might have that, because you're very right about it could be something that's in your thought process from many years ago that you were told something. You know, maybe it's a parent, maybe it's an ex-boss or even a friend, and it's in there, and you just feel like
that's right. You know what? There's a great. So I used to preach this, and so there's a verse that says, "Blessed are those who weep,"
mm-hmm.
and I think it's they inherit the kingdom of God. Do they? Oh yeah, they will be comforted.
Uh-huh.
See. I have a limiting belief that I can memorize things. I still seriously, I'm horrible at memorizing. But here's what I used to say in the sermon, which is a big deal. A lot of people think, well, the weeping has to do with the fact that these folks are, you know, they need to be comforted because they're, you know, they're hurting,
mm-hmm.
et cetera. And so it's like, well, God's going to come in that moment. Well, I think what's fascinating is that blessed are those who weep, because why do you weep? You weep because you've been hurt, because you've been wounded. And so I think of it like this. The person who's been hurt by a relationship, and then they weep, they cry over it, and then they move on, and then they say, I'm never going to do that again, means that they're not going to weep anymore. They're going to put a shell around them and say, I'm never, ever going to allow that to happen to me. I'm never going to make myself that vulnerable. And so I'm going to hide myself in this little corner or whatever. I'm going to protect myself from that injury ever happening. Yeah. Whereas the blessed are those who weep are the people who say, I'm going to do it again.
Yeah.
So my dog was sick, right? And, you know, it brings all these thoughts in your mind of what's going to happen if he goes. Because my first thought is, I'm never doing this again.
Yeah.
Seriously. That's the very first thing.
It's so painful.
It's so painful. And then 2 seconds later, I go, no, I need to do it again.
Yeah.
Because there's so much joy in the 10 years we've
and
had.
then you
him.
have, exactly.
I'm acting like he's gone. He's
Yeah.
right there just snoring away. So he's totally fine. But the truth is that unless we reinvest, unless we put, I don't know if you want to say our neck on the line, but unless we do it again, we miss out on so much because of a belief that says I can't do that or whatever.
Right. And I think oh gosh, talk about memory and quotes, but I think I said this in one of the first podcasts about, you know, speaking of the marathon, I remember reading this, and it wasn't, I think the quote was like, it's not the fact that I finished, it was the fact that I had the courage to start. Or something like that. And I messed it up, I know. But it's so true, because it's not really the end game of something that we might be thinking we can't do.
Yeah.
It's the fact that we're going to just go for it and try it and be confident that we made the right decision to try it.
Yeah. Well, you said something. So that's so funny, because earlier I was going to say this and forgot because of something else you said, but now you just reminded me. Because we work out and stuff, and sometimes you do deadlifts as part of my workout stuff. Is I do deadlifts, and what was really funny is I had a coach one time, and I was trying to do a deadlift PR, which I don't like to do because it hurts. But what was really interesting, and he just said the first inch is the hardest. The first inch. I mean, and it's so true.
It's so
once you get
true.
it off the ground,
oh my gosh,
the rest of it takes care of itself. Now, I'm not saying it's easy.
What a good analogy, though. But just getting that
hardest.
first, you're absolutely right.
And that's the
everybody
truth.
goes, try a deadlift, and you'll know exactly.
Yeah, exactly. But the point is that is exactly the case for nearly everything. It's that first step. First step of doing whatever it is. That's the hardest step. If you want to get up early and you're saying, no, I can't get up early, that first time that you do it, that's the first step.
Exactly.
You know, if you want to work out and you say, well, I just got to walk around the block, well then, and no, I don't walk around the block. I can't do that. I can't do that. It's that first step. It's that first thing. And the next thing you know, your limiting beliefs are being broken. But
yeah. And it's a baby step too. It doesn't have to be the all or nothing.
That's right. So, well, I think it's been good, don't you?
I think
we're amazing. So, hey, what we want to say to you guys is we're really glad you're listening. If you're out there and you have a limiting something that you're thinking, something you'd like to do, ponder whether or not it might have something to do with the limiting belief. And we just encourage you to seek. You know what? You're more than welcome to do something that I don't think I've asked you to do this, but DM us in our Instagrams or in our Facebooks or whatever. So I'm Benny Gonzalez. Isn't that right? Or am I Benny Gonzalez? Do you remember?
don't know.
I think I'm Benny Gonzalez.
On Instagram?
On Instagram. Yeah. BENIEGONZALES. And so you're more than welcome to Instagram me and
I am
DM me.
A daily dose of cocoa.
Or Valerie at a daily dose of cocoa. And we would love to help you and talk with you. If you have some kind of topic idea that you would like us to talk about one day, please let us know. Like our Spotify, whatever you're listening to, please like it. Please send it to some friends. That would be great for us. If you can comment on YouTube, if you're watching it, that would be great.
It would be. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
In advance.
In advance. So, yeah.
Thank you, Iggy.
Thank you, Iggy, for taking care of us from a sound-wise. And, yeah, Valerie, what do you think?
I think we're good.
Okay. Well, we'll see you
Thanks
guys
for being here, guys.
next week. Thank you.
Bye.
Ciao.